I'm the man on the mic.
And I'm the guy on the bike.
And this is the VELO29 podcast. Good morning, Rich.
Hello, Joe. Good morning.
How are you, mate? All right?
All right. Yeah.
Good.
All
We
right.
are going on with the gloves, the gilet and the thermals for the winter riding episode.
Sounds cozy.
Yeah, it sounds cozy. It needs to be, doesn't it? So I guess that means we're going to kind of chat about the difference between riding in the winter and not.
Yeah, I think I want to give my take on it. Winter's for us a very defined time of the year.
Yes.
We've done some work as VELO29 to make winter less monotonous, and I think that's well received. But you're going to ride by yourself. Smart trainers have come into it big. So just some chat around that and how I think you can keep yourself out of trouble.
Okay. Before we do that, though, I guess you've probably got some updates. I mean, the program I've heard is going well, but you had some interesting insights into that, didn't you?
Oh, we do. Yeah, we're interviewing someone who's taken part in it each week. So it hasn't. The pod will go out before this week's interview. So not to spoil it too much, but
okay, fair enough.
We interviewed a rider who's a really great guy, really close to us, Dave Pendlington, and he's in group 2, which is self-coached. But what Dave is doing triggered a conversation between me and Mark, who's doing the coaching, about sort of some statistics that are now starting to come through because we're in week 5.
Okay.
And this is exactly what we wanted. It's super interesting because we're seeing that people are really, they've really got the knob turned up high. they're really going for it.
Is it possible to do that too much, though? Is it possible to kind of overgo for it?
Absolutely, yeah. And listen to the interview with Dave because what Mark was saying was, and I wholeheartedly agree with him, that Dave's doing 13 days on the bounce and having a rest day. And even at low intensity, that's too much. He's doing a lot of high intensity work. He's going into his threshold and on all of that kind of thing. And you say, how do you feel, Dave? Well, I'm knackered.
Of course he is. So it's that kind of catch-22 because you do too much and then you don't actually grow in the way you want to.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the body needs to rest on it, and you should be going at your training, rather than just dragging yourself through it. So that's exactly why we did the program. Really insightful.
Is that the difference you would say between a good amateur rider and a professional rider? Is that ability to kind of balance everything?
I know loads of pros who've gone down that route of overtraining. Yeah. And it's a horrible place to come back from because you don't know what to do. You've overtrained. Your inclination is to train more because you don't think I've screwed up my winter. I've overtrained. You just start to go down this hole, and your performance. You stop finishing races and races that you've previously done well in. You're doing rubbish in, and so you train more, and all of a sudden you just become ill, and you've got time off the bike, and you lose motivation. And I've seen it at all levels.
How do you get the balance then? How is it a case of listening to your body, or is it more than that?
There is listening to your body, and that's a really hard thing to do because to understand when you're tired, but
for the right reasons. But
a workout will do. I have days when I don't really feel like getting on the bike, but actually get 5 mile into it, I feel brilliant. I have one of the best rides. How you distinguish between that and you've done too much? But keeping a track of your training, you know what you've done in the days and weeks before. Working with a coach, and that's not an advert for Mark, but he was, even after all my years, I check in with him about stuff like this, and he's always got some really useful insights. So that if you're struggling, that's a good place to go. But I'm not an advocate of less is more, but I think you need to build weeks like that into your diary so that you are giving the body a chance to recover.
And it comes from experience, doesn't it? It's like anything. The more you do it, the more you understand what's going on, and like you say, the different tired feelings. This is a tired feeling because I've trained well, or this is a tired feeling because I've overtrained, and it's those subtle differences that I guess you understand that the more you do it. Is that fair?
You should do, yeah, you should do,
but not always.
But no, not always. No. We chatted about it in the training episode, didn't we? And
we did.
Going back a while, but cyclists are amongst the worst of all athletes for overdoing it. And 500 mile this week.
Why do you think that is?
I think that.
Why are they different?
I think that we enjoy riding our bikes. I think the reason everybody gets into cycling, they don't want to win an Olympic medal or race or ride a sportive. They just want to ride a bike, and that is a wholly enjoyable thing. And I think there's a big part of that in it. And historically as well, even 10, 15 years ago, it used to be miles. Training wasn't quality, and I think there's a blend of all of that. But it's cultural, and I can't quite put my finger on why, but it certainly is.
Interesting. So we'll move on, because there's a few other things you wanted to talk about. I know British Cycling has started making announcements about the different tiers and things. Where are we with that?
Members will have got that email this morning. So we're out of lockdown 2.0, of course, and we're going to the tier system.
I knew it was all going to end in tiers, though. I told you.
Yeah. 3 tiers, if you were I am, and that poses a problem. So, we needed some clarity, and they've given that now. So. Very rough the headlines. If you're in tier 3, they are not sanctioning sportives. And what was missing from the sort of September, October guidelines was people who are in a restricted area and their movements to less restricted areas to do sports events. And that's been tidied up a little bit this time. So they're saying that if you're in tier 3, you should not travel to tier 1 or 2.
And that's different now, isn't it?
It's different, yeah. And I think we all suspected weren't quite right to do so before, but actually they're now saying you shouldn't.
Okay. Where does that leave you with your 27th, your winter sportive? Where does that leave you?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a problem. I've had a chat with the charity this morning about working what to do. So it's the daisy chain, it's a festive event.
That's it, the daisy chain, that was it, yeah.
Would be the 4th time we're doing it. Sorry, no, it'd be the 3rd time we're doing it. And we'd moved the headquarters anyway, but nevertheless, old and new headquarters are in Teesside, which is tier 3. The charity is very much a Teesside-based charity. So whilst we can take the event outside of the tier 3 area, and clearly I would be going to work there, but for work that is allowed, and we have all the restrictions, and that's okay. But we lose some of the support, and because of that statement, you shouldn't travel outside your tier to do an event. People who support the charity are not able to do it, so they can donate, but that's it.
Tough, isn't it? Yeah.
So just working out what to do. I don't want it to not go ahead, because like all charities, this year is the year they need
so important.
The most support, yeah. So we're working a solution. We will come up with one. But I think it's a bit of a shame that it can't go ahead in the area that the work is done for.
I mean, there are updates on the 16th of December with regards to changes in tiers, but it's so difficult to know whether anything will dramatically change, isn't it?
Yeah, there's talk of like they did in Liverpool, the twice weekly testing for tier 3 areas, but I've not heard anything about when that might be available in.
Okay.
And if it was available tomorrow, would it have had an impact by the 16th? Sadly, I don't think it would have done. So I'm working on the assumption that come the 27th,
maybe the same.
Yeah. The same. Yeah.
Well, we'll watch this space and see where that goes. Let's get on to meaty topic then, which is winter riding. And you've talked about it a little bit in the past, and I know we've talked about training in those episodes. But how different is it, and how different should we approach riding in the winter compared to other times of the year?
The winter was always so. I'd do my last. You come back from France, or in my case, or you do your last races if you were a racing cyclist towards in early October. You'd have fun in October, and that would be doing. We used to go to the Isle of Bute and do a race up there, and it was just fantastic. And they loved it. All these guys turning up in French kit and team cars, and they were just doing it for fun. And it wasn't like, you know, we were hungover and completely out of shape, so they used to beat us, and it was brilliant. And so things like that. But then come November, and I think for a sportive rider, the season's still ending in October, isn't it? So there's very little happens after that.
Yeah.
So and by that point, you were goosed. Your body, and no matter what level you were, if you were a racer and you'd done 60, 70 races, or you were sportive rider and you've done 3,000 tough miles in sportives and climbed and ridden through rain and all of those things, come that time of year, you were goosed, and the body needed a rest. So you'd literally put the bike away, and unless you really fancied a ride at the cafe and it was an all right day, you wouldn't touch it in November. You just wouldn't. Last thing you would do. Come December, you'd ride it if you wanted to ride it. So it was, but it wasn't training. It was just fun. And I remember we used to go, just get out. If it was a nice day, go. If it's a horrible day, don't. And you know, I remember overweight a little bit and getting beaten by everybody, all the locals, and it was just fun, and it didn't matter. And then my routine was always Boxing Day. I would ride my bike on Boxing Day. I'd do a proper 4-hour ride on Boxing Day, and that just psychologically
got you back.
It started. It started the season, and from that point on, it was serious business. I'd prepare properly in January, but preparing properly for me used to be just doing the longer, steadier miles. Tough because it's cold, and you know, icy, and you tend to ride the same routes where you know that by 10 o'clock the ice is melted if it is, because the sun's coming from the right direction, that kind of thing. It gets a bit monotonous, but there was no racing or anything in January. February, we started to go a bit further, taking a few hills, and come the end of February, you were ready to do to put yourself through a race or a tough event. But I see it's changed completely. I think for racing cyclists, it's still a similar thing. But you know, we do our winter series, and some of the guys who turn up for that in January, they're super fit. They've come from a cross season. So cyclocross, October, November. So probably they're a bit different. But some of those guys. So what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing it with the program, and I'm seeing it with our sportive riders as well, is that people want to ride the bikes 12 months of the year.
And is that changing because of the kind of indoor equipment and that kind of stuff that's available?
I think it's a big thing. Yeah. I think people are riding bikes for different reasons. So I know that a lot of our sportive riders are people who are a little bit older, and they've come into it from other sports, and they're used to other sports being 12 months of the year.
Carrying on, yeah.
Rugby, football, these kind of things, where the break is in the summer. And we see that a lot, where people don't, if you've got an event in August, forget it. You get like 100 people if you're lucky. But March, when it's freezing cold, you get 1,000. And so people are following that sort of football season routine type of thing. So people want to ride in the winter. They've got a bike because I felt I was putting on weight. I mean, I got into my 50s, I was putting on a bit of weight, and I thought I should do something. You know what? Cycling's a great one, but I don't want to take 2 months off. It doesn't work for that approach. So they're wanting to ride in the winter as well. So I think that for the masses who are now doing cycling, I think the dynamic of it has changed. And when I say things like, well, it's the off season, why you're riding in November, and people look at me strange, I'm only now really understanding sort of why that isn't and how it's come about.
There's also a big, well, there has been before lockdown, obviously a kind of lot of popularity in getting abroad for a couple of weeks, and, you know, riding, you know, in some warm weather, Tenerife or Canaries or whatever. That's obviously changed because of lockdown, but do you think that will come back? Is that still something that's very much part of the calendar?
It'll come, yeah, for sure. It'll come back, yeah. People love it. I was never an advocate of training camps, and I know a lot of people say to their wives, "I'm going on a training camp. It's essential to get through the year," and it's just going to Mallorca and enjoying some good weather.
It's a jolly.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with that. But I never training camps. I always thought were I like the idea of be super disciplined for a few days, but you don't have to go on Mallorca to do it. I have 4 days where I'm super disciplined, and the body will react to that and have a rest afterwards, and you'll be better. Whereas going and riding around Spain for 2 weeks, I've never.
But some would argue that the warm weather is all part of that kind of process of
warm weather's nice, yeah.
You know, strength and recovery and all that kind of stuff, because it's got a psychological thing going on as well.
Oh yeah, given the choice, ride around Yorkshire for the 4th month in a row in the freezing cold, or head off to Mallorca. I'm going to choose Mallorca.
You know what I mean? It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
But I wouldn't put my season based on that. I think it would just be an additional enjoyable part to it. But I was in Mallorca 2 years ago just for a family break. And I think it was late March, and you could not move for cyclists. And
that's what I thought.
It's unbelievable. And actually, there's so many of them can't cycle properly, because you go onto the nice mountain roads, which are very small, up to the coastal viewpoints and things like that.
And it's chock-a-block.
It's chock-a-block. Yeah, you can't descend if you're faster than other people are going, and because there's such a diverse mix, there's some people quite slow. You can't actually climb that much. I mean, I wouldn't bother. I'd go somewhere else.
That's interesting. Because there obviously is quite a market now for, amateur riders, a bit like the kind of stuff you do for sporties. There's quite a market now for amateur riders, to get on these camps and to do that kind of training, isn't there?
Huge, yeah, and it's dead good. If you want a holiday that involves riding a bike, it's dead good. But I'm sure this year I'll be quiet, but come next year, 2022, they'll have sold out record time, I would imagine, again.
So, a couple of tips then. What are your tips for people that want to kind of keep fit during the winter but not overdo it?
Well, I think that it's be mindful of, the body can only have it goes like that. It goes up, it comes down, not to the bottom, and then it goes up again, and it goes further up that time, and then it comes down, not to the bottom, further up the next time. And you've got to have that sort of approach to your training. And if you do that, if those up down are weeks or months or years or whatever, you've still got to have it. So the body needs rest, and November's behind us now, but you've still got December. We had fine weather in November. December looks a bit rubbish, the beginning certainly. So get some rest. Don't worry about, put the scales away. I'm an advocate of the bathroom scales, aren't I?
You are. Yeah, you keep sending me messages saying, how am I doing? He doesn't.
But put the scales away. Doesn't matter. And again, enjoy your Christmas. You should, if you're serious about your sport, you're not eating chocolate, drinking too much, having a block of cheese on, and that kind of thing through the summer. So psychologically give yourself a break and enjoy your Christmas. And certainly this year, more than any, we need stuff like that. Have a few drinks. Don't overdo it, but just do the things that you enjoy doing. If it's a nice day, your friends in your bubble or whatever is allowed are going for a ride, go for a ride. And if you do 1 hour or 4 hours, don't worry about it. Enjoy yourself. But I wouldn't be smashing the turbo trainer, getting my heart rate up to 160, 170, whatever. And I wouldn't be doing anything like that. And then set yourself like I used to. I think that really worked. And it doesn't have to be Boxing Day. That was just me being a little bit pedantic and awkward, I think. But set yourself a day that's in that Christmas break, and you're gonna start and be serious again. I guess most people would do it after New Year. But that psychologically makes a big help. I see so many people riding in the winter on the good bike with no mud guards, and they all, well, I can't fit mud guards this bike. Put mud guards on your bike, and if you can't put them on your good bike, you should have a winter frame or a cross frame or something like that, and you should be riding on that over the winter, because you don't want to be worrying about knackering a really nice bike, and it's horrible riding behind people without mud guards. Put some mud guards on, and basic stuff. I've never ridden a bike with lights in my life, and I just don't like riding in the dark. And I think morning and night, and I think probably morning's actually worse because drivers don't expect to see anybody. And I know lots of people commute, and lights these days are really good, but I always think be super cautious of riding with lights on, because if you're commuting, fine, but if you're just doing it for pleasure, really, is it pleasurable? If you go a group, you're going up the hills or something like that. Yeah, I get it, but.
And what about clothing? You know, obviously I mentioned in the intro gilets and thermals and things, but you know, does that matter what you wear, or is it really just your own preference?
I think that, I mean, forget, you don't worry about being aerodynamic. Being warm
Exactly.
is way more important. There's
Yeah.
some, you can buy a warm jacket, but if you want a warm aerodynamic jacket, you've got to spend a lot of money. So, if you're in the position to do that, then great. Buy a really good. I used to buy the best jacket I could get, and actually I've still got it now. It's 14 years old. But
Wow.
yeah, because you buy a really good quality thing, it's going to last. But tights, you fall off on the ice, you knacker them. So was never that bothered about buying. And you lose the heat from your upper body. So really nice jacket and sacrifice other things. I used to suffer with gloves, so really nice pair of gloves. And these days with electronic gears, you can wear thicker gloves and manage the gears all right, I find. So yeah, nothing extravagant on kit, but just keep warm. I see people in shorts, and I drive my wife mad. And we have little competitions in our group in the winter events about people turning up in shorts. Like, you shouldn't wear shorts in the winter. if it's below 14 shouldn't be wearing
degrees.
shorts. Yeah.
Good. Interesting stuff. Thank you. Love those insights. We try to do a goat every week, which is the greatest of all time. And I know you've got a certain era that you seem to like to focus upon with your greatest of all times. But who are we referring to today?
Robert Miller.
Or Pippa York.
Or Pippa York. If you've kept up with Robert's / Pippa's movements post career,
yeah.
I mean, this is even the beginning of my era. So this is me, little kid, stood at the side of the road, Chimney Bank, actually watching the Kellogg's tour as it was then. Riding became the Tour of Britain, and then stopped, and then became the modern Tour of Britain. But Miller was just sort of the epitome of an 80s cyclist to me, in that there was a load of obscurity going on there. He was very inward character, struggled with relationships in all kind of ways. But when you got to know him, was an absolutely brilliant, hilarious guy. He used to write. I mean, Cycling Weekly was bigger then than it is now. Probably didn't sell as many copies, but in terms of if you were a cyclist, you had to buy it. And Miller used to get this tiny little column at the back during the Tour de France, and it was called Miller's Diaries. And it was just an hilarious take with so much sarcasm and wit put in there on the Tour de France. And he used to write one every day, and then they'd publish 7 the week the tour was on. And it was just brilliant. I'll have to dig some out and find some.
Well, I think I've actually been able to work with Pippa, as we now know him or her, and Pippa's like that, very, very candid, very funny, very, very good at insight and analysis, but in a kind of, like you say, clever way. And would he have ridden like that as well? Then did he ride like that?
Yeah. Crazy attacks, things going wrong, terrible days. But was until the recent era, was Britain's most successful cyclist. Finished 4th in the Tour de France, same year, won the King of the Mountains, back in the early 80s, 84, I think it was. 84. And it wasn't until Bradley Wiggins finished 3rd in 2009 that somebody got a higher finishing than Miller did. Wow. And won several mountain stages, was a big player in the Greg LeMond era of winning Tour de France. Miller was on Z team, but cycling was completely different then. And I reading his stories and stuff, he used to say, my family write to me, say, can I have some track mitts or something like that? Can you give me something from the team? And he said, I've got 3 pairs to last me the season. I'm not going to give you any. And it was just this these were normal guys, whereas now there's like this stardom and it's a bit untouchable, and the world shifted, hasn't it? Anyone who's got fame is different to everybody else. Yes. In reality, I don't suppose they are, but it seems that way, and people want it to be that way, and it's like, but now we'd have a YouTube channel and a million followers and an adverts, but it was just a guy riding his bike, and he was brilliant, and I think he would have won the Giro if the locals had not conspired against him and sent him the wrong way on one of the stages. He did well in the Vuelta, didn't win it, but again, Vuelta suited him, adverse conditions. He was used to riding around Scotland as a youngster and stuff. So yeah, great guy, always worthy of mention. I think if you talk about British cyclists from the years, he was doing it. Roach, Kelly, there was some great British cyclists and some British speakers as well, like Yates and Piper and Anderson, and it was a good era, and we did well, and then we just had that massive drought from sort of early 90s to late 90s, didn't we?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes again with regards to dips and dives.
Well, yeah, I mean, we said where's the next Grand Tour winner going to come from, and then we had a Giro winner, didn't we? So shows what we know.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And there are some youngsters coming through as well. So we'll see what happens. That's brilliant. Thanks, mate. Anything else to chat about before we say ta-ta?
I think that it's that time. It's a funny time now. I think we've come out of lockdown, and people are ready. People have had enough now. Vaccine coming, which is brilliant. Massive day this week, but in reality, looking at who's going to get it and all that kind of thing, it's going to be for us and people who ride our events. It's going to be Easter-ish, something like that in it. So I think the message now is the world is going to get back to normal, but it's and if, like, I don't know, in September or something, people would have said the world will get back to normal and it'll be around Easter time, we'd have all gone, you know what, I'll take that. But I think now we sort of had enough, haven't we? And I'm doing the work like that I've done before to change events and the daisy chain and stuff like that. And even from my perspective, it's a little bit like I just want to be on the other side of it. So
I want to leave my house.
Yeah,
I want to get back on the microphone from an event perspective.
Get some work in.
Yeah.
But I think, and I don't know about you, but I struggle with winter. November, December is all right, but I don't like the dark nights. I don't like wet weekends and stuff like that. I like to be out, and I think it's going to be another few long months. But we've booked the winter series. 3 dates in January, 1 in February. Positive we'll be out of it enough by then. We need that Teesside area in level 2, so everybody who's listening, losing Teesside and Darlington or County Durham, get yourself down into tier 2.
And I think you're hoping to do some more kind of freedom to ride events over the winter as well, are you not?
We're doing. Well, yeah, that's so yeah. Freedom to Ride was at Crofton, was really brilliant. Thanks to the naming, of course. But there's the winter series we've done at Croft, racing, dead popular. So why not bring the two together? Yeah. So Freedom to Ride's on the morning, so you can pitch up 9 o'clock, enjoy Croft in the same way as we did in the summer. And then from 12 o'clock onwards will be the racing, and we're calling it 30 for 30. So it's the new format of racing that British Cycling are supporting. Need to be out of tier 3 to do it, of course. Okay. But if you've ridden Freedom to Ride, a load of people bring children, stick around for the first hour, have your sausage sandwich, get a tea, and watch the racing. We're streaming the racing live, which we did last year, brilliant, but really sort of pushing that on a bit this year. We were getting 10,000 people on a Saturday afternoon watching amateurs race around Croft, and that's brilliant. So we're going to push that on a bit. So I think if all that can go ahead, we'll have a good January.
Great.
Fingers crossed.
And it's all of the ifs, but hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I think most people are beginning to see that. But like you say, it's just a case of digging in for a little bit longer and getting rid of this nasty virus and moving forward.
It is.
Good. Well,
thanks,
Joe. Rich.
Cheers. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching
everybody.
/ listening, and see you next week.
See you guys. Bye.